Saturday of the 15th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the book of the prophet Micah. Woe to those who plan iniquity and work out evil on their couches. In the morning light they accomplish it when it lies within their power. They covet fields and seize them, houses and they take them. They cheat an owner of his house, a man of his inheritance. Therefore thus says the Lord, Behold, I am planning against this race an evil from which you shall not withdraw your necks, nor shall you walk with head high, for it will be a time of evil. On that day a satire shall be sung over you, and there shall be a plaintive chant. Our ruin is complete, our fields are portioned out among our captors. The fields of my people are measured out, and no one can get them back. Thus you shall have no one to mark out boundaries by lot in the assembly of the Lord. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, Do not forget the poor, O Lord. Why, O Lord, do you stand aloof? Why hide in times of distress? Proudly the wicked harass the afflicted, who are caught in the devices the wicked have contrived. Do not forget the poor, O Lord. For the wicked man glories in his greed, and the covetous blasphemes, sets the Lord at naught. The wicked man boasts, he will not avenge it. There is no God, sums up his thoughts. Do not forget the poor, O Lord. His mouth is full of cursing, guile, and deceit. Under his tongue are mischief and iniquity. He lurks in ambush near the villages. In hiding he murders the innocent. His eyes spy upon the unfortunate. Do not forget the poor, O Lord. You do see, for you behold misery and sorrow, taking them in your hands. On you the unfortunate man depends. Of the fatherless you are the helper. Do not forget the poor, O Lord.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. The Pharisees went out and took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. When Jesus realized this, he withdrew from that place. Many people followed him, and he cured them all, but he warned them not to make him known. This was to fulfill what had been spoken through Isaiah the prophet. Behold my servant, whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom I delight. I shall place my spirit upon him, and he will proclaim justice to the Gentiles. He will not contend or cry out, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, a smoldering wick he will not quench, until he brings justice to victory. And in his name the Gentiles will hope. The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from Micah 2, 1-5. The prophet Micah was a contemporary of Isaiah, but unlike Isaiah, who prophesied in Jerusalem and considered Jerusalem to be the seat of salvation that the Lord would visit upon Israel, Micah hated the big city. He came from a small town, and that small town was used as a garrison for the army. The army came in with all of the immorality that the army usually has, and those who led the army came in and bought up fields, cheated people, pushed them around. And so we hear the condemnation of those who would do these kind of actions, because Micah himself saw it. And what does he say? The day will come when they will be punished. The very fields that they stole will be given to their captors. In other words, God is a guarantor of justice in the land. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything works out all the time. But in the long run, if we live a just life, then we will be living in God's justice. And living in God's justice is already the reward. The Gospel is from Matthew 12, 14-21. The Pharisees are frustrated by what Jesus has said, Remember, just yesterday we heard how he took upon himself the prerogative of interpreting the law, how his followers were to observe the Sabbath. And therefore, the Pharisees decide to put Jesus to death. What does Jesus do? He proclaims that he is going to fulfill the prophecy of Isaiah the prophet. Now, when he's talking about this particular prophecy, this is one of the songs of the suffering servant. Remember, the songs of the suffering servant are 4 poems that are found in the second part of the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapters 40 to 55, probably written during the exile. And those 4 songs were not written by the author of Deutero-Isaiah, the name we give to those chapters, but rather written by another author and incorporated into the prophecy of Deutero-Isaiah. When he incorporated these poems into his prophecy, he didn't really identify who the suffering servant was. It's a mysterious figure who would suffer for the sins of the people, die, be buried among robbers, and rise from the dead. Jesus is the one who identifies himself as the suffering servant. Whenever he calls himself the Son of Man, a title taken from Daniel 7, he also uses vocabulary taken from these particular poems to say that his mission is to be the Son of Man, but not as is understood in Daniel 7, but rather the Son of Man who would suffer for the sins of the people, die, and bring them back to life. How is he going to do that? Not with violence. He wouldn't break a bruised reed. He wouldn't quench a smoldering wick. And not only is his justice going to be visited upon the chosen people, it will also go out to the Gentiles, which is again significant because this is being said in the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel written for the lost sheep of Israel. Nevertheless, the Gentiles are already being invited into the salvation that Jesus is offering. And may God bless us.